Hi, welcome back to Open Hand Farm. Today we're going to head outside. We have so much work to do in the garden. We have a lot of infrastructure that we need to put up. We need some trellises, we need some boxes made, we need some arbors made to have plants grow over. So come along with us and see how we put all of these things together. The first thing we're going to work on is a row cover for cabbages. These are my rows. I have compost laid down. It's kind of hard to tell, but I have wood chips in the walkway. I have put one rebar in, and I'm measuring over 3 feet to accommodate for the width of my planting area. After placing the marker at the 3 foot, I will go ahead and measure down my row and run my string so that I'm sure to put my rebar in a straight line. After I place all my rebar, I realize that I need to kind of reposition my compost that we put in there. I want to make sure that it's in the middle so that I'm actually planting in the compost. So I'll just go down the line and make sure it's all piled up where I need it. After I get my rebar in and my compost in place, I'm going to take some 1/2 inch PVC pipe that has been cut in half. They were 12-foot lengths, so each of the hoops that I'm putting on here is a 6-foot length, and I just put it in over the rebar. Sometimes you gotta kind of play around with it, and the rebar is what holds it in place. And then I will continue to do that so that each row has 3 arches. It helps if you put your rebar kind of leaning in a little bit so that it goes with the shape of the arch. After this, it's time to put the fabric on. I stopped using the regular white fabric a couple years ago and started using this screen fabric. I love this because I know the water gets through when it rains, and it also allows air to get through so it doesn't blow it everywhere. So what we're gonna do is basically pull tight and make ponytails at each end of the arch. Now, first we're gonna pull them together, and then I will let go of mine and come down and hold Mark's ponytail while he ties it. He's starting off with a slip knot, and then he's just going to wrap it around. The second one that we did, he actually did like a hangman's noose knot, and that worked real well too. This one, he just did the slip knot, and then he twisted the rope around several times just to make a wider spot that ties the fabric in place. And then when he got to the end, he just used the 2 shorter ends to tie a square knot. Then after the knot was tied, I took a landscape staple and just adhered it to the ground. And I will probably come back and do a longer staple so that it doesn't pull up very easily. Now, after it's completely covered, all you have to do is lift one side of the fabric, and it should just roll up and stay in place for you. You can reach under there and plant things. You can use your hoe under there. It's great. I love this method. And we have had some really windy weather lately. And even though I am simply holding the edges down with 2 bricks, they are not blowing away. They're just staying down where they need to stay, and I love it. Again, I think it helps that the screen fabric allows the airflow to go through instead of blocking the airflow and making it blow the fabric. These are pretty heavy blocks too. And I weight this down on both sides. And you could open it from either side. I just happened to open this side because I wanted you to see it. The next structure is a tomato arbor so that I can plant some indeterminate tomatoes and they can grow over the arbor and I don't have to worry about them sprawling everywhere. So we put up 4 T-posts. And now we're going to add a cow panel and we're going to put it in place on one end and then Mark will kind of fold it up over the top to bring it in and we'll turn it into an arch. Now this does get a little tricky because you have to make sure that it leans against those T-posts so that you can kind of snap it into place, and it does have tension on it. So you want to be careful not to let go of it and have it smack you in the face. Now, after we get it in place, we make sure it's where we want it on the T-post, and then we're going to lift it up. So I will plant the tomatoes on the inside of this arbor, and then I will run strings from the top of the arbor down to the ground to start the tomatoes, and then eventually I'll be able to weave them in and out of the cow panels. So each side is going to get lifted up so that they're even, and this just gives me a taller arch so I can walk under it and not worry about hitting tomatoes and stuff like that. After we get it in place, we'll use zip ties to connect it to the T-post. We'll do one side at a time and just do 1 or 2, and then after we get it completely in place, we'll go ahead and add more zip ties to make sure that it's not going to pop open. Then we'll measure where the next T-post goes, and we will continue to measure and pound in T-post for 6 T-posts total because we're using 3 cow panels. And we did overlap the cow panels by 6 inches, and then we had 6 inches extending on each end of the cow panel as well. This is our last panel. You want to make sure it's held in place again by those T-posts so that it doesn't pop up and hit you. Again, we will work together to lift and apply the zip ties so that it does not shift. Then we'll just continue to add extra zip ties to make sure everything is secure, including the very top of the arbor. The next project is a trellis for cucumbers. And I was doing this one while Mark was doing other things. I found some welded wire in our shed, but it had a little piece on it that needed to be snipped off. So I went ahead and found where that connected and just snipped it all off so that I could use the tall piece instead of having this short piece connected to it. And then I stretched it out to the length that I needed. I used one of my bricks to hold it down on one end, and then I stood on it to keep the roll from rolling back up on me. And I just snipped it all apart so that I could use it as a trellis. Of course, I'm gonna need T-posts, so again, I ran my string line so that I was sure to put the T-post all on the same line. So I went ahead and pounded them in, and after they were all pounded in, I went ahead and connected the welded wire to one end with zip ties again, and I kind of started the zip tie so that I could lock it around itself, and then I lifted the wire up so that it too is not resting on the ground. I'll be able to put the plant down there, and as it gets longer, I will just feed it into the wire and be able to control it that way. I went ahead and connected it to all three of my T-posts, and I pulled it as tightly as I could before I zip tied it. This end I went ahead and wrapped around the T-post. That helped me be able to pull it tighter around the post and hold it in place. Then I went back and just secured everything that I needed to with more zip ties. Then we had 3 beds that we put together for the onions. Mark put these together while I was working on the cucumber trellis. It's just a very simple 1x4 boards with an L bracket in the corner. They are 4 foot by 8 foot, and there are 3 of them. So once he got them put together, I helped him get them in place. We have children here, we have dogs here, and last year my onion plants got stomped on more than anything else. So I decided this year I wanted to put them within a perimeter so that it was more obvious that they were there. So I'm hoping that this will do the trick. I have a pile of compost that you see there on the left, and that will be scattered in these 3 boxes after I take a hoe and kind of work the soil so that these rest in nicely. We butt them up against each other, but this one has already shifted, as you can tell. So I'll probably come back with screws and shoot in a few on each connecting boards so that we don't end up having weeds grow through there, and they all hold together nicely. We have 2 or 3 more panels that we can do things with, and I think what I want to do is use them in these rows here in this new garden bed. We call this the compost bed. We will use them for determinate tomatoes. Now let's take a look at all of the projects that we put up in the last 2 days. We have the arbor that we put together for the indeterminate tomatoes. We have a trellis for cucumbers, and those will grow very nicely here because this is a shaded area in the afternoon, and that's why I also wanted to put my cabbages here, so we have the covers over the cabbage beds so that that white cabbage moth will stay away. And then in the clothesline bed, you didn't see me do this, but we put together a trellis for the Malabar spinach, and we were running out of same size posts, so they were kind of different sizes. This area will be where we plant our sweet potatoes, and we need to put a fence around the perimeter. We'll probably just use chicken wire. And then in the food forest, we put up another arbor that I'd like to grow winter squash on, as well as moved over our TP that I plant peas on, and I added rocks in there for the kids to sit on. And of course, in the compost bed, we put the 3 raised beds, I guess you could call them. And I'm really anxious to get those filled and our onions planted. Thanks so much for coming along on this adventure of setting up the infrastructure of our garden. It was a lot of work, but now I know that when the time comes, I can plant whatever needs to be planted and it will be ready to grow on a trellis or over an arbor or whatever their need may be. If you're new here, thanks a lot for joining us, and we would love to have you again, so feel free to subscribe. And if you like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up. That will really help my channel grow. And until next time, blessings on you and yours.